Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with another Friday Reads. Now, this video today was supposed to be my 2024 reading wrap-up, but I am nowhere close to being ready to record that. I tried. In the meantime, I thought I would just wrap up Friday Reads. These are the books my last books for 2024 and the first books I am starting for 2025. So, I finished A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan, a Pulitzer Prize winner, and I can see why. I loved this book. It is definitely on my top 10 novels of 2024 list, even though I haven't made the list yet. It is such a unique novel. It plays with format in a couple of different ways. Each chapter is from the perspective of a different character. So in the center of this novel, you've got a guy named Benny. He's middle-aged now, but in his youth, he was a punk rocker, and he is still a punk rocker at heart. Benny has had a very successful career as a music producer, and as the novel opens, he's older, he's divorced, and he's kind of, you could call it a midlife crisis, but he's wondering, what he's doing with his life, if this is really what he wants to do, has he accomplished what he wanted to, that sort of thing. So Benny's kind of at the center of the novel. I think he's only got one chapter from his perspective at the very beginning. You come to understand Benny through the perspectives of the other characters, like Sasha, who I would say is another main character here, who worked as Benny's assistant for 12 years, but had a whole life of her own. And Benny's ex-wife, there's a chapter from her perspective while they're still married, and about what led to their divorce. There's a chapter from from the perspective of one of Benny's friends when he was a teenager, and they were hanging out together and had a garage punk band together, and thought they'd make it big. There's a chapter from one of Sasha's best friends in college to show what she was going through at the time. This is a novel about connections. And that's what I loved about it. It's about life and love and family and the connections between people. How one person's actions can cause ripples that affect dozens of other people's lives, maybe hundreds or thousands. I loved it. I love books about connections. And it also plays with form in another way. Most of the chapters are pretty straightforward. One of them is a magazine article that was written by one of the characters. And one of the chapters is actually a PowerPoint presentation. It's from one of the younger characters. I don't want to give too much away. And it is set a little bit into the future. And that was cool about this novel, too. It goes into the past, but also into the future of the characters and our future. It's funny, it's warm and moving, poignant. I just really loved everything about it. Definitely on my best fiction of 2024 list. Now, I finished that, and I had 2 days before the end of the year. I had already declared my first book of the year. That is, and you can see my YouTube short on that. That's an annual event hosted by Sheila at the blog Book Journey. She does it every year. So what does an avid reader do when there's like a day and a half left of the old year and you're not ready to start your New Year's book yet? You squeeze in one more. So I looked through my backlog of graphic novels and graphic nonfiction, and I've got a huge backlog. Many of these are from publishers, and yeah, as with everything else, I'm behind. So I selected one that I thought would help with a bunch of my 2024 reading challenges. So I ended up reading, I'll put the picture on the screen. You can't see that very well. Uprooted, a memoir about what happens when your family moves back by Ruth Chan. This is a graphic memoir about the author. I think she's 12 when the book starts, about how she was born in Toronto, but her parents are Chinese. Her mom is from Hong Kong. And when she's 12, they decide to move back to Hong Kong to be closer to family, for a better job for her dad. And so that is a tough age for any move, let alone a cross the world move, a move to the other side of the globe. Now, Ruth can understand Cantonese fairly well. Her parents have spoken it to her since she was a child. But she speaks English back to them, and so her speech isn't very good in Cantonese. Not to mention the fact that she's leaving all of her friends behind, of course. Let me see if I can show you a couple of the pages here. Okay, so this is Ruth and her best friends in Toronto. She's got this great friend group. This is before she leaves. They take a trip to a local amusement park and ride roller coasters, which they all love. Ruth just has great friends. They're talking about how much they'll miss her. Here are her first impressions in Hong Kong. She says there's just so much of everything, buildings and people, and they're driving on the wrong side of the road. So it talks about Ruth's challenges and eventual joys as she tries to settle into this new life with her parents in what is to her a foreign country. Our Christmas Carol clock is still up. I'll wait until it finishes. So I really enjoyed Uprooted. It was the perfect book to squeeze into that last little part of 2024, and I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it. You may have seen my YouTube short, but my first book of 2025, my first book of the year, is Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Catherine May. This just seemed like the perfect choice for me. These last few months have been really rough for me. As often happens at this time of year, my chronic illness was badly flared up. It still is to some degree. I've had a few good days, which I'm hoping is a good sign of a trend. But as you can see, I'm still on the couch, very achy today. So that was the other reason that I couldn't tackle a big year-end update today. Besides the fact I'm not even nearly ready for it. Anyway, this seemed like the perfect book for me. It has certainly been difficult times lately. And I've only just started it. It's just January 2nd after all. So I'm 25 pages in, and I want to show you how many passages I have already tabbed. Yeah, as I expected, I can really relate to this already. So she's using the word wintering in a metaphorical way, meaning that there are periods in everyone's life that are like winter in nature, a time to kind of retreat, hibernate, take care of yourself. So she goes about describing, it's basically a memoir, she goes about describing one such period in her own life that began with her husband's sudden hospitalization, followed by her own health problems, and all of this came at a time when she was already feeling very overwhelmed. So she's going through the months from September through March, and each one is a jumping off point for the topics that she covers about this metaphor of wintering. The sections in January are called Darkness and Hunger. So I'm hoping January improves from December, but we will see. Here's a couple of very short quotes that really spoke to me. There are gaps in the mesh of the everyday world, and sometimes they open up and you fall through them into somewhere else. Somewhere else runs at a different pace to the here and now, where everyone else carries on. Somewhere else is where ghosts live, concealed from view and only glimpsed by people in the real world. Somewhere else exists at a delay, so you can't quite keep pace. I mean, this has been my life for the last few months, and very often at various times during my chronic illness, which I've had for 23 years. In another passage, she's talking about this feeling overwhelmed that struck her even before she had health problems. And I think this speaks to all of us in today's world. She says, life has been busy, and in the general rush of things, these vital fragments of my identity have been squeezed out. I've missed them, but in a shrugging kind of way. What can you do when you're already doing everything? The problem with everything is that it ends up looking an awful lot like nothing. Just one long haze of frantic activity with all meaning sheared away. And she's talking about how she was pushing herself to do everything and to get everything done. And she says, but here I am, having worked so hard and for so long that I've made myself sick. And worst of all, I've nearly forgotten how to rest. I'm tired, inevitably, but it's more than that. I'm hollowed out. I'm touchy and irritable, constantly feeling like prey, believing that everything is urgent and that I can never do enough. And my house, my beloved home, has suffered a kind of entropy in which everything has slowly collapsed and broken and worn out with detritus collecting on every surface and corner, and I have been helpless in the face of it. I think we all feel like that sometimes in today's world. So I am already enjoying this very much. Definitely the right book at the right time for me. On audio, I finished The Giant's House by Elizabeth McCracken. This was a really unique novel, and I didn't know what to make of it at first, but it definitely grew on me. It's a very moving novel. The narrator is a librarian in a small town on Cape Cod. It's set in the 1950s, I believe. If I'm wrong, it might be the 60s, but I think it's the 50s at the beginning. But it is mainly about this boy who she gets to know and becomes friends with, and eventually, as he grows older, falls in love with. And you know that right from the start. That's not a spoiler. This boy named James, her name is Peggy. By the time he's 12 years old, shortly after Peggy first met him, he's already over 6 feet tall. By 19, he's 8 feet 4 inches, or maybe 6 inches. So this isn't just tall, it's a medical issue. He is termed a giant in medical terminology, at least in that time. I'm sure they know more about this now. And so he's got all kinds of medical problems. He's not expected to live long. And he's just got difficulty with everyday living. He can't fit in normal furniture. He can't fit in a car. And Peggy really becomes friends with him, gets to know him, first by bringing him books that he's interested in, and later by helping him. Once she understands the seriousness of his condition, she really dives into finding ways to help him, to make his life easier. But it says right at the beginning that it's a love story. And it is. Now, at the beginning, when he's 11 and she's 26, that sounds a little gross, but it's not like that at all. They're friends for a very long time until either of them starts talking about love. And he's an adult by then. It's a quiet sort of novel, but it's very thoughtful. It's very moving and poignant. And I enjoyed it. I'm glad that I read it. It was a finalist for the National Book Award. I think back in 1996 for fiction. So I can see why. And it's only January 2nd. I haven't started a new audiobook yet, but I already know what it is. The Briar Club by Kate Quinn. And yes, these are CDs. This is my book group selection for the middle of January. And the waiting list on Libby, I am still on it, but the wait list for the audio or for any other format besides CDs is hundreds of people long. So I was really hoping it would come through on Libby so I could just download it and listen to it. But alas, I have the set of CDs. So in the next couple of days, I will upload all of these to my laptop and then download them onto my iPod so that I can listen. I am very much looking forward to this because I really enjoyed The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn, and I've heard great things about this in 2024, so looking forward to that. Please leave a comment below about what you're reading this week.